Thank you so much for joining us. So tonight we're hosting our webinar, The Good, the Bad, and the Blocked. This is co-hosted by Conservation Voters of PA and PennFuture. This is going to talk about Pennsylvania's 2025 to 2026 legislative wrap-up. So what happened in this past session, and what are we looking forward to moving on? And so we're going to go to the next slide just to get some housekeeping done. If I can have the next slide, please. So first, some Zoom logistics. So if you are in need of closed captioning, they are available tonight. You can go ahead and find that button in the bottom hand corner of your screen, click it, and it will automatically generate for folks. It can also assist folks depending on whatever your need is. The next thing is throughout the event, we will be accepting questions, and at the end, we will have some time set aside for folks to answer questions. Our team members are here to answer, and we will also follow up with some additional information post-event. But we ask that folks use the box function that can be found in the toolbar again to submit your questions so we can sort through them and get to as many as possible. Thank you so much. And so we can move to the next slide. And so welcome everyone to our event. We are so excited for you to join us. Tonight's two of our amazing staff members, Adam Nagel and Katie Blom, are here to talk about some of the work we've done in the state alongside Representative Elizabeth Fiedler, who serves as the chair of the House Energy Committee and has played a pivotal role in helping us to pass some of this amazing legislation through the past session. So I'm going to pass it over to them to get started.
Thank you so much, Natalie. We don't need this slide up. Nobody needs to look at Adam and I that long if we're not talking at you. But we are so excited that we could have Representative Fiedler here with us today, knowing that things are still really busy this summer. So thank you for being able to join us this evening. So what we're going to do for all of you, we do have some nitty gritty to get in later in this session, but we really wanted to have a solid conversation with Representative Fiedler about everything that kind of happened, especially in the House. A lot of good things happened, but there's still work to do. So, Adam, do you want to start?
Thank you, Katie. And yes, thank you, Representative Fiedler, for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you taking some time to talk more about the House Energy Committee, the fantastic work that you're doing, that your staff is doing in Harrisburg, and talk a little bit about everything that's been going on over the past several months for most of this year, maybe a little bit of last year, depending on how far back we want to go. So, data centers are the number one issue in PA and across the country. The House Energy Committee has been at the heart of those conversations in Harrisburg. Can you tell us a little bit more about what's kind of been happening, what your committee has focused on? Talk about a little what's been done and what more there is to do.
Sure, I would be glad to. And I see some folks saying there's an echo. I muted myself when I wasn't speaking. I don't know if that helped, but maybe. I'm sorry to the folks who are having trouble with the echo. So thank you so much, Adam and Katie and everyone for having me. I'm State Rep Elizabeth Fiedler, proud to represent my neighbors here in South Philly. If you've been to a Phillies game or an Eagles game or a Flyers game, you have been to our district. So very, very proud of where I live and the chance to represent my neighbors in the State House. As Katie and Adam mentioned, I also serve as the majority chair of the House Energy Committee, which is about 1.5 years old. So we are firmly in like toddlerhood. We're no longer an infant committee. We are really getting our first steps in and we're about to take off. So I'm really proud of the work that we have done so far. So thank you for being such tremendous partners in that. And I'm really excited for what's to come. I know there's been a lot of talk about data centers, and that's something that almost a year ago, we started to hear a lot more about. I heard about it from my constituents here in South Philly. Certainly everybody in the Capitol was talking about it. Stakeholders were talking about it. So we pulled together a multi-committee I won't call it a task force. It didn't have an official title like that. A work group is a better name, because we recognize that tackling the issues that are data centers, it really takes a multi-committee approach. So I have the energy committee. There's also the environmental committee, the finance committee, the local government committee. So we pulled the EDs and chairs of all of those groups together and started to brainstorm. What are the different things that we should be thinking about? What are the challenges? What are the problems? What are the holes that need to be plugged in our current state law? People 5, 10, 20 years ago didn't anticipate this particular type of development. So I'm really proud of a lot of the legislation that we've gotten through, as well as a bunch of things that are in the works. And I know we're going to get to the what remains to happen, and the answer is a lot. But so far, we finished the budget more or less on time, which is good. As part of that, we were able to get through a piece of legislation from my colleague, Representative Kyle Mullins from up in Scranton. And that bill requires data center developers disclose their future water and energy usage. And for anybody who has heard concerns about data centers anywhere, I would bet that water and energy usage are some of the top concerns. Not the only concerns, not saying that at all, but we do hear over and over concerns about the water usage of these facilities, as well as their energy usage, and negative and potential negative impacts on the natural environment, and certainly on the people and businesses who are already there. And so I'm really proud that Rep. Mullins's bill, which was HB 2150, got through as part of the budget, and it requires the data center developers to disclose those issues, those usages, as well as any mitigation measures that they plan to and commit to using to make sure that if they move in, there is not a negative impact for the people who are already there. It authorizes DEP to compile the information and issue a yearly report and make recommendations for what further energy and water mitigation measures developers need to do to make sure that that happens. So it's at its heart, it's a transparency and disclosure bill. I think that's good. I think that's a piece of it, but that's not the whole thing. So that's the one bit that we were able to get in the budget. I'm glad it was in there. Rep. Mullins did a great job steering it through, and I think there's a lot of work to come. I'm hoping we can get some more things done in the fall. House Bill 1834 came out of our committee. That's from my colleague, Chair Rob Matzey. It is a big, complicated bill designed to regulate large data centers in Pennsylvania. It came out of our committee and then out of the House, the first piece of legislation to come out of the House to regulate data centers. So we are very proud to have gotten that out of the gate. And at its heart, House Bill 1834, the goal is to make sure that regular people in Pennsylvania are not subsidizing data centers. That's the main thing. It does a bunch of other very, very good things, but at its heart, that's what it does, for good reason, because we know that people are struggling with their bills already. Affordability is a real crisis. It is a real thing that people are having a hard time with, and we know that bills are only continuing to go up as a result. So that bill comes from Rob Matzey. He is the previous chair of the House Consumer Affairs Committee. I'm very much concerned about consumers and affordability and utility bills, and knows that stuff inside and out. So that's kind of where the idea came from, but there's a lot more in 1834 that's really, really good stuff. Our team, including Steve Petro and Nick Unger, who are both staff members for the Energy Committee, really worked their butts off on that bill on 1834, working with both CVPA, PennFuture, Sierra Club, like tons of environmental stakeholders, tons of labor stakeholders, tons of all the stakeholders. So we did our best. And I think that is such a solid piece of legislation that is sitting in the Senate, that if I could dream up what we could get through, I would really like to see a big chunk of that happen. And then I'll just throw out there also, there's Governor Shapiro's grid plan, which I know we'll probably touch on, House Bill 2650, which includes some provisions from 1834, but also has some other things too, all related to data centers.
Thank you. Speaking of data centers, and you touched on a lot with that. We are the only grid territory where in the country where there is incredibly clear evidence that utility bills are rising due to the increased demand from data centers. So as you are talking about some of this data center legislation, what are some of the other things related to utility bills that the House was able to accomplish this year?
So, great question. My district office here in South Philly is right on a street corner, very accessible by bus. People walk in all the time. And I can tell you that affordability is not a new crisis. It's not a new problem for a lot of poor people, a lot of working class people, and even a lot of middle class people. You guys know that. I know that. It's only gotten worse as people's bills have really gotten out of control. And people are they're being forced to make really terrible decisions. Like, should they pay their utility bill and keep the lights on and keep the air conditioning running? Or do they take their medication? Like stuff that it is really like morally deeply troubling. So we are working very hard to try to do what we can. House Bill 1834, which I mentioned, it is in the Senate, has not gotten out of the Senate, but I'm very proud of the strong bipartisan vote that we had in the House. And I do think that sets it up really well to hopefully have some of those pieces get through. And like I said, that's House Bill 1834. It protects consumers from paying for the build out of data centers. So all of the generation, transmission, all that sort of stuff that would have to be built to serve a data center. Because a data center is coming, we have to do this. We do not believe that regular people should have to pay for that. You shouldn't have to subsidize that. That shouldn't be in your bill. So that's a huge step forward, and I'm hoping that we can get something done on it. There's a bunch of other pieces of legislation that remain to get done. Heather Boyd has House Bill 2131, which is a return to default service. That would actually save consumers a ton of money. If you've ever had some kind person knock on your door and ask if you'd like to switch to a different provider for your utility service, I feel like most of us in Philly have had that experience, and certainly in other like cities and dense places. That is what we are talking about. We are talking about a system where you should be able to opt into a program if you would like to have your energy generated by a certain kind of source. But the way that it's structured right now, it's a pretty predatory system in which a lot of people end up signing up for something they don't really understand. They're locked into a contract and they can't get out. They can't figure out how to get out. So that is something I'm hoping we can get through. One thing that we did get done in the budget that is very exciting is called Advanced Transmission Technologies. It's even cooler than it sounds. This is a bill that I had with my colleague, Chair Danilo Borgos. He serves as chair of the Consumer Committee. And this was included in the budget. So it was a standalone bill, but we wrapped it into the budget because it is a very good idea. Bipartisan support for this. It is advanced transmission technologies include all these different kinds of hardware and software upgrades that you can plug into the existing transmission lines to make those transmission lines transmit energy more efficiently. So if you don't do this, you're losing a ton of energy that's been generated just into the air it's on its journey from where it was created to your home. And so these hardware and software upgrades, like super nerdy, but also super important. And if we want to be really thoughtful yes, up to 40% more. So if we want to be thoughtful about making sure that we are using the existing infrastructure that we have in a smart way, in an efficient way, not building out new transmission lines if we need to, why don't we use the ones that we have more efficiently and more effectively? So we got that through. I was super excited, and it really allows us to maximize the energy that we are producing so that we, ideally, we can be more thoughtful about how we generate energy and how much more energy we have to generate. This new technology will save consumers a lot of money because, as you may imagine, building new transmission infrastructure and lines is very expensive. It's very costly. And so if we can avoid doing that in some cases, where we can just get what we need by putting this hardware and software upgrades to work, then that's good for everybody. It means it's not an additional cost on your bill.
So, Rep. Fiedler, I'm going to circle back to 1834 briefly here because you've mentioned it a lot. I want to focus on one particular part of it if I could. So there are a lot of concerns being raised, in Pennsylvania, across the country around a term that we keep hearing more about, which is bring your own generation. The idea that we don't have the grid capacity to power data center demand. We're seeing that bear out in Pennsylvania and across the PJM territory. But there are rising concerns around these data centers being powered by fossil fuels or exclusively by fossil fuels, and the impacts that can have. The Environmental Integrity Project recently released a report around what that could mean for air quality and health and a whole bunch of other concerns. Can you talk about 1834 from the perspective of how does House Bill 1834 prioritize and promote the use of clean energy technology as it relates to data centers in Pennsylvania?
Yes, I'm glad to. And I think in general on this issue, we are woefully behind in Pennsylvania. So I know I mentioned the energy and water disclosure from Rep. Kyle Mullins. 1834 has a lot of, I think we need to be doing a lot more. And I think we're finally starting to catch up. So I think 1834 does include a lot of the pieces that we need. When it comes to clean energy, 1834 requires 10% be clean firm initially, and then 32% by 2035. The 32% we are told is ambitious. I like to be ambitious. I also believe that we are in the middle of pretty serious climate change. I believe climate change is real. I should lay that out there in Harrisburg. That's not a given. And I believe, we see the extreme weather already. We see really, really catastrophic consequences of our failure to act more quickly. And so, if 32% is ambitious for 2035, I think we have to find a way to do it. And we know that these large companies are run by huge for-profit developers who are interested in building. And so if they build, and I do think that is you could probably have a whole 5-part webinar about that part, right? And about zoning and municipal planning code and all of that stuff. I would tune in. I don't know if I need to be the guest, but I will listen. If they build, we should hold them to the very highest standards that we possibly can, the highest feasible standards. And so that's why we put in the 32% by 2035. I know there's been a lot of discussion about the AEPS in Harrisburg for years, for generations. And I'm hoping that that's something separately that we can tackle. But yeah, it's 32% by 2035 for the data centers in House Bill 1834.
Katie, can I just ask one quick follow-up if the rep will allow me?
Do it.
I'll try.
And I'm sorry, this is just coming to me, but obviously the conversation around data centers has changed quite a bit over the last 10 to 12 months that your committee has been engaging on it most directly. How is what is happening out in the world? How is what is happening in other state legislatures across the country around this kind of changed the way that or have you felt changes within conversations to the extent that you can share that? But how has it changed the views of you and your colleagues in Pennsylvania around this issue? How are we responding as a state to what's happening where, New York imposes, I'll use a word, New York imposes a statewide moratorium. Texas has called for an audit of all their projects most recently this week. So how have some of the conversations that are happening in other parts of the country informed or not informed what's happening here in Pennsylvania?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it definitely has. Data centers, I'm looking for a document that I had, but I'll give you my best. This issue generally is just evolving and unfolding very, very quickly, right? And you don't need me on as a state rep or an energy chair to tell you that. Every local paper when I'm traveling or go back to visit my parents or something. I mean, the cover of every paper has something about a data center or multiple data center proposals, right? It's everywhere. And I think that, like I said in the beginning, I think we're woefully behind and people feel that, and super, super scary for a lot of people. That all makes sense to me. I think that we have an amazing staff on the Energy Committee. And like I said, we work very closely with the local government committee, with Chair Steve Samuelson and the Finance Committee. I mean, just great people and Chair Daniela Borgers from the Consumer Committee. I think it really is a team approach, and we are We share articles. We are keeping an eye on what other states are doing. We're trying to be the first to do good things. 1834, if we're able to get it through in large part, even if not in whole, would be a big deal. It would be really, precedent setting. I think it would put Pennsylvania out there as a leader. We've also seen the 3-month pause from Representative Paul Friel. We saw a bill from Joe Cerisi. So, I think there is a lot of interest in this issue, as there should be. Kyle Donahue had a bill that came out of our committee, came through our committee, that was the model ordinance. So yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to come at it from different directions. And really the big picture, whether we agree on the nitty gritty details or not, is we are behind. We are behind, and local elected officials and just regular people are overwhelmed by how fast this is happening. So yeah, we're definitely looking at what other states are doing, and at the same time recognizing that Pennsylvania is it's my favorite state. It's a special state with a lot of very local elected officials, right? And so we always, always, always have to be very mindful of the work of local elected officials and the fact that they know their place better than anybody else.
Thank you. I appreciate the response.
Yeah. I want to be cognizant of time because there are two other questions I want to make sure we get to
Okay.
at the end. But you've had several initiatives, and we've talked about 1834 and some of the data center stuff. You referenced the ATTs, advanced transmission technologies, but you had other things that were in the state budget this year. And would love to hear about some of those other priorities that the House was able to negotiate into the budget.
Sure. Yeah, so it was a pretty good budget. Not a perfect budget, but pretty good. And like I said, I think it was a victory that we got it done almost on time, because we know that there are real consequences for schools and nonprofits. When we don't get our budget done on time, that creates a whole set of problems and financial issues for those folks. So I am glad we were able to. One of the big things, one of my favorite things, is Solar for Schools, which we were able to get through for a third time. $25 million appropriation. Solar for Schools is a Pennsylvania state grant program that helps schools across the Commonwealth, intermediate units, community colleges, put up solar panels. They could put the panels on the roof of their building. They could put it on the ground if they have a lot of area. And they get to generate their own energy on site, save millions of dollars, get to show their students firsthand what it's like to be a tradesperson, what it's like to be a solar installer. I mean, all this cool hands-on stuff where they get to see it firsthand. And the business managers at all of those school districts, yes, hooray for Solar for Schools. The business managers at those schools, we had the chance over the last couple of years to tour the Commonwealth and visit all of these schools, in urban places, suburban, some very rural corners of the Commonwealth. And business managers there are having a very hard time. Just like you and I are having a hard time when we get our bill for our electricity, they are facing just some impossible costs. And for them, for regular people, the decision is, do I take my medication or do I pay my energy bill? For a lot of these schools, the question is, do I cut a kindergarten and a first grade teacher, or do I pay my utility bill, right? It's not quite as cut and dry, because obviously they have a system and a process and a bureaucracy, but it is not a good set of choices. And so by helping school districts be able to generate their own energy on site, we are locking in their energy costs for decades to come and giving them, someone once called it a money tree, which I thought was kind of funny at the time, but it sort of is, especially as we face an affordability crisis. They put the panels up, the sun is shining down, they get to generate their own energy, and then they have the stability of budgeting for years to come, and they can save that money and invest it or do a tax break or not have to raise property taxes, right? Whatever the right fit is for wherever they are. So Solar for Schools, huge success, bipartisan success. And another round of $25 million. And we're going to be rolling out a campaign in the next couple of months to really try to spread the word to school districts and community colleges and intermediate units about this program. Because while we do see the loss of the money on the federal side, that was sort of the other half of the pot of money for Solar for Schools projects, the federal money is going away. But we want people to know that the state money is here and that DCED and the Shapiro administration and the Commonwealth are really committed.
Thanks. We have time for two fast questions, I think. I'm going to go ahead and do the next one, and Adam, you can do the last one, which I think is fun. The what knowing all of the really amazing things, and we're going to have a visual for everybody, that probably doesn't even include everything that the House was able to accomplish on pro-environment policies this for the last 18 months. Um,
Mm.
what are some of all of that's gone through the House? That is wonderful. But what are some of your biggest priorities for the remaining session days this fall?
Ooh, biggest priorities for the remaining session days this fall. So, data centers, top of the list. Like I said, we got Kyle Mullins's legislation through in the budget, but I think there's really a lot more to be done. Hopefully, a lot of what's in 1834, maybe also some of what's in grid. There's a lot of overlap between the two proposals. So, something in there, a big chunk of it, as well as possibly legislation from Rep. Friel, Rep. Cerisi, Rep. Vitale. Like there's a lot of ideas out there. I think that we need to do something serious on data centers in the fall. It feels really, really important, especially at a time when people are already struggling to be able to pay their own bills. They don't want to hear about other reasons that the bills might be going up. They want us to get their bills lower, right? Like most of the people I talk to, they don't need the whole explanation and the whole run through. They already know, and they need us to like ASAP find a way to get those bills down so that they can survive and pay their bills. Data centers at the top of the list. Possibility of games of skill. I don't know. It's not an environmental issue, but we'll see. And then mass transit. I am hoping, I think that it's something that we will talk about in the fall and hopefully do next session, but I feel like the conversation has to continue to happen in the fall. We can't, like I said, I live here in South Philly. If I'm not walking to the doctor's appointment or to my kid's school or to a meeting or to the stadiums to go to a game, if I'm not walking, I'm on the bus or I'm on the subway. Like these things are integral to the economy in a way that we can never disentangle them, and also really integral to people's lives. And obviously also a green form of moving yourself around the city or the town or the municipality where you live. So mass transit, I think we got to keep talking about it. I think it doesn't happen until next session, but I'm really committed to keeping that as a top priority. And I know my colleague, Chair Morgan Cephas, who's chair of the Philadelphia delegation, continues to hammer away on that as a top priority as well. How'd I do? I tried to keep it short. I didn't, but you have one more.
That's fine. Adam has one final, more fun question for you.
Yeah. Rep, you mentioned that the Energy Committee is a new committee. You've entered the toddler or squarely in the toddler phase. You are no longer in the infancy phase of development. And just from someone who obviously interacts with your committee a lot, so maybe I'm a little biased, but like honestly, you've turned it into one of the busiest committees in either chamber in Harrisburg. Whether it's just holding hearings or moving bills or discussing and debating important issues, like it really is truly one of the most substantive committees in all of state government. So, credit to you and your staff again. As you have moved into the infancy phase and recognizing that there's more work to be done in the fall, whether it's Energy Committee or environmental issues or otherwise, what are some of the lessons you've learned over your, year and 8 months now as chair of this committee? Like, what are some of the things that have surprised you or not surprised you? But what are some of the lessons you're taking away from, your first legislative session as chair of a committee?
That's a really good question. We can do hard things. When I first was elected to the state house 8 years ago, I had a lot of friends who were, I think, a little bit, they were just like, that's where you want to go? Like, you want to run for office and you want to go to the state house in Harrisburg? I think that the lesson for me of this last year and a half, and also just in general, is that we can do big, bold things in Harrisburg. It can be very, very hard. But I think that whether it's data centers, affordability, mass transit, like we managed to get Solar for Schools through. It is a relatively small appropriation, $25 million, but I have to tell you that plenty of people along the way told us that that was impossible. It was a very nice idea, but like it was just not possible. It's just not a thing that happens. We were able to work with stakeholders like yourselves and also labor and lots of other folks, and build a coalition. And the process of doing that and building the coalition and touring the state with lawmakers on both sides of the aisle, I feel like that taught me that if you put in the work and you're thoughtful and you bring other people in and share both the work and the credit, you can accomplish a lot. And so I think we've got some huge challenges ahead of us: data centers, mass transit, skill games. Like just that alone is an awful lot. But I feel very, very lucky to get to work with such an amazing staff and team on the Energy Committee, as well as the members of the Energy Committee. We are getting up to speed very, very quickly on issues. I didn't mention battery storage, but I do hold a lot of hope for Rep. Rivera's bill and some other legislation on that, you know, the things that it could make possible, the problems it could help solve. So I think there are a lot of like new ideas, but also things that have been hanging out there that we just haven't taken up in the legislature over the last couple of years that could make a difference for real people. So I've learned that. And I would say I've also learned the value even more of building relationships. A lot of what gets done is based on relationships. Somebody has an idea, who are they going to call? Who are they going to pick up the phone and call? Or if they have a problem, who are they going to pick up the phone and call? So I continue to try to work really hard on that on both sides of the aisle and in both chambers. We're not going to agree on everything, but that's kind of not the point, right? If somebody tells you they agree with you on everything, they are definitely not telling you the truth. But we can agree on most things, or maybe just with some folks, I agree on a couple of things. Like nobody wants to see their constituents' bills going through the roof. That is bad. It is bad for people, regardless of whether they got a D or an R next to their name. So yeah, I think I love this job. I'm really lucky to get to work with both of you and work with the staff on the Energy Committee. And I'm excited for what we're going to do in the next year.
Thank you so much, Representative Fiedler. We are always, always thrilled to be working with you and your team and other members of the committee to get all of this stuff done. And I think I speak for Adam and I and all the teams at both Conservation Voters and CDPA that we were so excited with everything you and your other chairs were able to push through along with leadership. And we're pretty tired, but it's a good tired because we got a lot done. It is a new feeling for us with that kind of more pro-environment group of folks there in the House. So it's great. So thank you so much for joining us.
Of course. Thank you both so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks. If we could bring our slides back up. All right, we'll just go right into the next slide. And they might be a little slow because they were paused for a bit. There we go. Folks, all of the bills that the State House delivered, this isn't even all of them necessarily. I do have two bills on this visual for you that I put little asterisks next to. House Bill 2223 and House Bill 2150. Those are two bills that Representative Fiedler mentioned that we were able to see added to the budget. I left them on there just in terms of providing that visual of all of the things that got done. And we had so much fun really working on these things. And it felt good to really be on the offense instead of the defense. I want to touch on just a couple of things. There's a lot of bills here, but just to give everybody an idea of what the House has pushed through. Having some regulatory guidance around geothermal energy development. That is number 2076. Promoting fairness in Pennsylvania's retail electricity market, 2131. We have a really big one that we're also going to be talking about later when Adam talks a little bit more, but House Bill 2496, I saw this referenced in the chat. This would be a local pause on data centers to help municipalities address the speed at which all of this is happening so they can protect their communities. We also have some bills that maybe didn't pass this spring, but last year, because we do have a 2-year session election cycle in Pennsylvania, if you did not know that. We have a community energy bill that has been sitting in the Senate for a bit that authorizes projects like community solar projects and other things to put energy together for communities to help reduce costs and bring renewable forms of energy onto the grid. We also have solar ready warehouses. We talked earlier with the representative about solar for schools. Warehouses, especially in places like Cumberland County, Lehigh County, frankly, almost every county in Pennsylvania has a warehouse. Those warehouses could have solar on top of their roofs. That is Bill HB 1260. And there's other bills, electric distribution capacity maps, water well licensing requirements. We really need to protect people's water just on a day-to-day level and not just from data centers. There are so many things that have passed, and I've only given you a highlight of what has been out there. And there's so many things that have been passed that I am going off of a cheat sheet because we now have so many numbers of bills that we have been able to work on. So this has just been a really excellent thing to see come out of the Pennsylvania State House. But there's more. If we could go to the next slide, please. So what do we still need to work on in the House? Obviously, there's a whole list of bills sitting in the Senate, except for the two that we mentioned that landed in the budget. But for things that conservation voters and PennFuture are looking ahead towards in the very few session days that we have this fall, we're looking at three very specific bills. You heard Representative Fiedler mention briefly about battery storage. House Bill 2380 needs to get through the State House. This would help reduce utility bills by utilizing what we call grid scale battery storage. So if you have an off-grid solar system at your home, you might have battery packs there, right? Well, this would essentially be the same thing, except kind of like the size of semi trucks, to put it simply. And they would hold all of that energy and be able to put that stored energy out on the grid, either in times of high use or when there's less solar being generated from the panels, to be able to keep those energy levels up where we need them. The other bill is House Bill 2184. This is a public interest in PUC proceedings bill. This is a fun one, I think, but I like good governance. And this one is all about defining what the public interest is. As it turns out, the Pennsylvania Public Utility Commission is to make decisions that affects our bills based on the public interest. But the public interest has never really been defined. And this is our opportunity to do that, to think about environmental justice communities, to think about low income ratepayers, and to really make sure that when the PUC is making decisions, they're keeping folks like you and I in mind and not the big corporations. And the last one I want to lift up, and I also saw a comment in the chat about this something similar to this particular bill. And it is House Bill 2359. That is Representative Cerisi's bill, which would essentially block these data center companies from using NDAs as they're developing something in your local municipality. So that is also something. Now, these three bills, there's a lot of other bills out there, a lot of other things we're keeping our eyes on. But these three bills in particular are some pretty top priorities for our two organizations. They are still in the House, and we are motivated to get them out of committee and out of that chamber this fall and really show some strong bipartisan support for them. So that is what has been on the move and all the good things the House has done. I'm going to kick it back over to Adam for the next part.
Thank you, Katie. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. So we've got a lot of stuff in the Senate that we are still looking to push. I want to center some of this around, it's right there in the middle. So a lot of these three things, maybe not, maybe the last, okay, go back to the previous slide, but I want to still use this one though, because I want to center some of this conversation around the Conservation Voters of Pennsylvania, PennFuture, energy affordability agenda, which you've heard, which if you receive our emails, that's probably why you're here. So I'm assuming you do. You've heard a lot about the energy affordability agenda over the course of this year. It was released in mid-January. We have continued to push various bills and policy proposals within that agenda. I think it's really important to note that a lot of the bills that Katie talked about, as far as bills that have moved, or even some of the ones that haven't, like House Bill 2184, or at least haven't moved out of a chamber, we have seen some degree of movement on 6 or 7 of those 10 principles and policies that we highlighted in the energy affordability agenda. And as it relates to a bill like House Bill 2150, which Representative Fiedler talked a lot about earlier with respect to data centers and reporting of energy and water usage, that was actually in our energy affordability agenda. So within 6 months, we were able to get a bill passed and enacted into law, which in Pennsylvania, if you're following at home, just based on the math, forget the politics and policy debates, just based on the sheer numbers, there's about a 1% chance that a bill can become a law in Pennsylvania just on how many are actually enacted versus how many are introduced. So we've got around 4,000 or so bills currently introduced in both chambers, House and Senate. Roughly 40 of those, 40 or 50 or 60, give or take, are probably going to become law or have become law already. So you have about a 1% chance to make that happen. So the fact that out of 10 particular issues that we highlighted, we got one through and enacted into law, that is important, is a good step. We have more to do around data centers. Representative Fiedler acknowledged that. But to get one of those things, one of those 10 pieces through is a really big thing. We are monitoring, as we've discussed, House Bill 2496, which is the 180-day local moratorium on data center development to provide. And I saw this question, I believe, in the chat, but it might have been in the Q&A at this point. Basically, what that bill provides for is a 6-month pause so that local municipalities can update their ordinances to account for data center use. There is Senate Bill 1345, which is another moratorium bill that got some movement in the Senate back in June and July. That is actually a 18-month moratorium that could potentially see movement when the Senate returns to session in the fall. We will see. What else? Solar ready warehouses was mentioned. We are also looking at House Bill 2302, which is water well licensing requirements from the water perspective. So that is an important bill passed the House with bipartisan support to bring accountability and cleaner water to folks who are on private wells. So that helps establish some guidelines with respect to how those wells are constructed and make sure that they are constructed well. So that way, that was too many wells. So that way we don't have infiltration and other issues that can arise if a well is constructed poorly and not up to standard. So, there are a bunch of things. House Bill 2184 is still in the House. We are hoping for a floor vote on that one, as Katie mentioned. I also agree that is a very interesting and fun bill. There is a lot of stuff and not that many session days left. When you're looking at the calendars for both the House and the Senate, we're looking at around 11 or 12 days. That is still plenty of time for legislators to act. You'll be hearing more from both organizations about things that we want to push as we get into September, October, and November. And we are going to do all that we can and hope that you will join us and do all that you can to really put the pressure on state legislators and say we need action on these issues, which Katie's going to talk more about in a second, so that we can get moving and really advance sound policies in Pennsylvania to protect us all, provide for clean energy, deal with data centers in a coordinated and logical fashion, and also, play around with consumer protection stuff. I think that's a space that we can all perhaps engage a little bit more in. And we can go from there. So I'll turn it back over to Katie, and then I think we'll go to Q&A after that. I see some really good questions
Yeah,
everywhere that we need to get to.
so many. Real quick question in the chat. We are not talking about politics tonight. We are only talking about policy. But when we talk about policy, one aspect of that work is accountability. And one of the things that a lot of you, some of you, hopefully, know about is the Pennsylvania Environmental Scorecard. Conservation Voters of PA, we work on this with our partners at Sierra Club, Pennsylvania chapter, Clean Water Action, and Clean Air Action. And we put this together. Y'all, we can only score so many bills, and we scored a lot of bills. We were able to pare down all of the bills that we wanted to score because you saw that huge list down to, I want to say, maybe around 15 to 18 bills. Showed a wide variety of how your state legislators voted on a variety of issues that came up: data centers, affordability, consumer protection, water, democracy issues, all kinds of things. That launch date is August 19th. If you are frustrated as we are that the Senate has not moved on a lot of these things, go check out your senator's environmental score. Maybe we can find some answers there, and maybe that public accountability and seeing how these votes are aggregated might be able to push some of them into doing what we know is the right thing for the environment. So stay tuned. If you are on our email lists or our social media, we will be launching the Pennsylvania Environmental Scorecard on August 19th. And I'm going to kick it back over to Natalie to get us started on Q&A.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Katie. This was great. We have some really fun questions that have been submitted by our audience today. I will encourage folks to continue to submit questions. Even if we don't get to them now, we can follow up with some more resources. So the first one is actually for Katie. So Katie, could you highlight how provisions in the grid will be monitored and enforced?
Yes, in the grid legislation. So that is an interesting bill because it is currently optional. We added a lot of great things to grid as it passed through the House, thanks to work of its prime sponsor, Representative Joe Webster, who introduced us and really helped us get a lot of amendments there. But the thing is that is if you want to access a sales tax exemption, if you want to access a speedier type of permitting, then you have to do these things. And that's where enforcement can become a problem. And we do want to see the provisions strengthened a little bit more in there, not only to actually require them and not just make them necessarily optional on, say, a sales tax exemption, but to really put some teeth on it. So we are going to need to continue to do some work amending that, but it is expected that to oversee these things, because of the tie-in to permitting, that state agencies like DEP would be looking at all of those things, but we got to tighten it up. It's still a little loose.
Awesome. Yeah, no, lots of work to do
Go
in the
on.
future.
I'm just going to jump in very quickly and just say that I think that also emphasizes the point that House Bill 1834 is so
Yep.
critical, because what GRID proposes to do is essentially place requirements on data center projects that are seeking tax incentives. So that might not be every data center project. So House Bill 1834 covers all data center development in Pennsylvania. And I will also say that there were no fewer than 3 different proposals around amending or repealing the data center tax exemption that were voted on in various forms and fashions in Harrisburg in June and July, regardless of how we deal with the data center tax exemption. So if you support GRID, fine. If you support repeal, fine. However we deal with the tax exemption, we still have way more work to do to regulate data centers effectively in Pennsylvania. So, like, there is certainly a part of the conversation that needs to take place around the tax exemption. It is not the entire conversation when it comes to data centers. We need a local moratorium or a statewide moratorium. We need to pass honest to God regulations to make sure that we are effectively dealing with this industry. So.
No, awesome. Thanks, Adam. Thanks, Katie. I'm going to follow up, Adam, with 1834. Is the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program part of 1834 still in the current version of the legislation?
Still in there. And I'll also highlight another cool provision in there, which is actually the creation of, if I'm remembering this correctly, the Energy Independence Fund,
Mhm.
which also, so basically both of those things, if you're a data center if you're a data center project and you want to be developed in Pennsylvania, you have to put some money into LIHEAP. You have to put some money into this Energy Independence Fund. And the Energy Independence Fund is cool, simply because it promotes things like community energy projects and clean energy projects in Pennsylvania. So we can start dealing with, start funding, providing dollars for root causes. We need more clean energy on our grid. We need, utility bills to be more affordable. Clean energy and storage is the way to do that. So, yes, very good question. LIHEAP is still in there. Energy Independence Fund is still in there, and we have to keep fighting to make sure that those things stay in the bill if it moves forward.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks, Adam.
and I'm going to jump in and kind of continue Adam's answer there. Excuse me, tickle in the throat. I also want to lift up some other webinars that are going to be happening that partner organizations are hosting. Friends
Mm.
at Pulp, PennFuture is going to be involved, and some other folks that are going to get into a lot of other aspects beyond just what we've talked about here tonight. So please pay attention. I know that PennFuture is going to be sending some stuff out because there are going to be some panelists on these presentations. Public Utility Law Project, Center for Coalfield Justice, NRDC. A few folks are gathering together to kind of put on an educational series. And some of that's going to include things like community benefit agreements, if there's going to be a data center, all kinds of stuff beyond just what we've talked about here tonight, from clean energy investments, LIHEAP, and preventing cost shifting. So go to those.
Awesome. We will make sure to include that in the follow-up email. While we have you, Katie, another question. Does the Solar for Schools money get used every year? I know it was mentioned earlier about that funding being.
Oh, this is easy. Yes, it is oversubscribed. Significantly oversubscribed. I want to say it averages between 80 and $90 million in requests annually so far. And we have 25 million has been budgeted. So it is regularly oversubscribed. There's what, 500-ish school districts in the state of Pennsylvania. So let's keep doing this work because people want it.
No, we love to see it all across our state. Adam, is there a good chance that community solar will pass in the Senate, given the Solar for Schools program was part of the state budget?
No. I'll just that's the easy way to answer that one. I'll say that there's a lot more work to be done to convince the Senate that a great idea like community solar finally makes its way into law. It's been debated and discussed for about a decade now, I think, so or more. So, yes, it is time to finally take action on that. But I think we're going to need to do some more advocacy on the Senate side for that bill to be enacted into law.
Awesome. Nice. Thanks, Adam. Katie, is there any proposed legislation that would provide townships with additional time to develop zoning regulation and ordinance when they are not yet prepared for data center
Yep.
proposals?
Yep, that is House Bill 2496. That is the one that has already passed the House that you heard both Adam and I speak of already. It is Representative Paul Friel has been really good about that bill. There's a lot of different options to help local municipalities out there but we need to be able to give local municipalities the time to address things.
Mhm.
If you are a small municipality, you only meet once a month and you have part-time staff, it's going to take a while to make sure your community is protected, and we need to be able to give people some time.
And so we have one final question here that I think really, is what folks need to know of how do we move forward and what do we need to do? So Adam and Katie, what is the one thing that our attendees, our volunteers, our members, and our community members can do to help move these bills?
One thing, you're asking for one thing.
Maybe many?
Um, I think the one thing that you can do to help move these bills is when you see an email from one of our organizations, please click on it. Please click on it, because there is more than likely going to be an action there that you can take. Whether it is calling one of your legislators about a bill, signing a petition, signing up for an educational webinar so you can learn more, so you have a better phone call the next time you call your legislator. But it really is about answering, clicking on those emails, and engaging in the advocacy process.
Awesome.
Stay engaged. That's it. There's
Mhm.
a lot going on in the world right now. There's a lot going on in Pennsylvania right now, and we so appreciate everybody's time and energy here to help us move these important issues in Harrisburg and raise awareness around them. So just continue to stay engaged. We appreciate you, and as Katie said, you're going to hear from us over the coming months, and then certainly next year as well. So just stay with us, and we appreciate you.
Awesome. No, we're really excited to keep doing this work alongside our partners and our community. Well, that was it for our Q&A. I know there are still some questions. We will make sure to follow up in the follow-up email with some resources. And also, you're welcome to reach out to our team members. But I'm going to pass it back to Katie now to close us out.
Yes. Again, thank you all so much for joining us. We're really glad that we were able to have Representative Fiedler join us. But I just want to say there is a call to action on the next slide that we would like you all to take when you get a chance. This is like answering your emails. I see that it's already been posted in the chat, but if we can post those in the chat again, we need to tell people, our state senators, to pass some of these bills that the House has already passed. We have got to regulate data centers, keep costs low, address the affordability crisis that we are having right now, especially around utility bills. So